Thing. Well, I always think that three makes it a crowd, and I can assure you that I will not make it a crowd. I've just entered and I've been told I should say a few words. Well, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the ambassadors, Japan, and Mr. J. Panda, Member of Parliament, who will be presiding over the program. The ambassador series was started to enable all of us to get the viewpoint of the different countries, and we've had 3 or 4 so far, and this is the one that we look forward to with great attention because India's and Japan's relations have always been good and in the recent past have progressed considerably. An important reason for this is that this is on the eve of a visit of a parliamentary delegation sponsored by Ananta Aspen to visit Japan, which they will be leaving in about 10 days' time. Well, as I told you that I will not come between you and Mr. J. Panda, who requires no introduction, and the Japanese ambassadors. You have their biodatas with you. So with that, I'll request Jay to conduct the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Lamba. Your Excellency, Ambassador Hiramatsu, Ambassador Lamba, Tarundas, Kiran, and their colleagues at Ananta Aspen Center, with which I'm proud to be associated. My colleague from Parliament, Shri P.D. Rai, distinguished members of our diplomatic corps from industry, scholars. I have had the privilege of attending a couple of the earlier Ambassador Series talks, and I have been eagerly looking forward to Ambassador Hiramatsu's talk for the overriding reason that the bilateral relationship today between India and Japan, I believe, is the fulcrum of Prime Minister Modi's outreach to the world. The Prime Minister surprised everyone, and I think I wouldn't be remiss in saying everyone in this room as well, when he turned out to be a foreign policy Prime Minister. And with the immediate outreach to the immediate neighborhood, followed by a sustained outreach across the continent and across the world, in the last 3.5 years, India has once again been repositioned as a rising economic power and one that is getting more comfortable in fitting into the larger shoes that entails, in bringing about a global order that is fair and that is mutually beneficial. And in this effort, the relationship with Japan is second to none. It's no secret that Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe share a special bond that goes far beyond even close friendships between heads of government. I know that our Prime Minister consults Prime Minister Abe on important global issues before he comes to taking major stands or major positions on it. And they have cooperated on a variety of issues around the world, from how to engage with a new American administration that is unlike any that has been seen before. And I think it helps that Prime Minister Abe plays golf because our Prime Minister doesn't. To how to deal with the challenges that the world is faced with maintaining the freedom of the seas, the sea lanes, dealing with economic challenges, dealing with defense challenges. The agreements that have started happening between India and Japan are seminal. The 10-year, decade-long plan looking forward to 2025 on defense issues, the institutionalized dialogues and visits, the gradual scaling up of exercises such as Malabar, setting ever more higher standards year by year, the participation now of India since late last year with the Quad, these are all important elements of, as I said at the beginning, India getting more comfortable in playing a role that helps create a stable world rather than just pointing out the shortcomings as we have often done in the past many decades. I don't want to make a long speech of this. There is no one better than Ambassador Hiramatsu to talk about this. He has been central in this evolving relationship and has played a key role in bringing about some of these arrangements and agreements that I have just been referring to. I would just like to conclude by touching upon one aspect, which is broader, which goes beyond just the bilateral relationship. I believe there is an increasing understanding around the world that the democracies of the world need to work closer together. We have had many regional and other multilateral forums where large numbers of nations work together and cooperate together. They have their strengths, but they also have their weaknesses. And some of these weaknesses at global forums, such as the United Nations and others, can be overcome by having close cooperation between the democracies of the world. And this is what is exemplified in both bilateral relationships, such as the India-Japan, the Japan-US, the India-US, and the regional and multilateral, I wouldn't call it regional, they're really global, the multilateral relationships involving countries such as Australia and others. I will leave it at that because the impact of these democracies, some of them developed post-industrial nations, others, like India, very rapidly growing and gradually stepping into the entry levels of middle income status, is going to have an enormous impact on the world of the 21st century. It is already beginning to see ambitious projects, such as the Freedom Corridor, that Japan and India have started working on. I will take a moment to welcome my colleague from Parliament, Shri Vivek Tankha, to join us. And as I was saying in conclusion, very ambitious infrastructure projects are being taken up between our countries, which I look forward to hearing more about in Ambassador Hiramatsu's talk. With that, may I request Ambassador Hiramatsu to give us his address.
Thank you very much. Honorable Members of Parliament, Mr. B.J. Panda, Mr. Premdai Rai, Dr. Sagata Bose, Mr. Vivek Tankha, Mr. Tarun Das, founder, trustee of Ananta Aspen Center, Ambassador S.K. Lamba, chairman of Ananta Aspen Center, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is a great pleasure for me to be a part of the Ambassador series by the Ananta Aspen Center. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to Ms. Kiran Pasuricha, Executive Director and CEO of Ananta Aspen Center, for inviting me to share my views on the ever-flourishing Japan-India relationship. We welcome Ananta Aspen Center's renewed focus on Japan. I'd also like to thank Honorable B.J. Panda for chairing our session today. Mr. Panda is an old friend of Japan, and I'm looking forward to hearing your perspectives on the ways to further strengthen our bilateral relationship. As you witnessed in the historic visit of Prime Minister Abe to Gujarat last September, Japan-India relationship has entered a new era. This visit was unprecedented and special, most evidently demonstrated in the enormous welcome and gracious hospitality that Prime Minister Abe received from Prime Minister Modi and from the people of Gujarat. Indeed, the quantum leap in our relationship has been achieved under the strong leadership of a genuine friendship between the two prime ministers. It was during Prime Minister Modi's first state visit to Japan in 2014 that we elevated our relationship to the special strategic and global partnership. Only 3.5 years have passed since then, but I feel we have made a dramatic progress in strengthening our partnership. Let me highlight 5 significant achievements we have made. First, convergence of strategies. Japan and India have agreed to work together to achieve free, open, and prosperous in the Pacific by synergizing Prime Minister Modi's Act East policy and Prime Minister Abe's free and open in the Pacific strategy. The two countries subscribe to common principles such as the rule of law, freedom of navigation, and peaceful resolution of disputes. Japan sees India as the most trustworthy partner and highly appreciates India's principles and consistent approach to international challenges. Indeed, the strategic convergence is the most remarkable evidence that our relationship has become genuinely special, strategic, and global partnership. Second, high-speed railway. The historic first step of the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railways project took place during Prime Minister Abe's visit to Gujarat. The actual construction works will begin shortly. Shinkansen was once a dream project for Japan. It transformed the country into an industrial hub. Now the project to realize the same dream has started in India. Japan is committed to fully supporting this project, as well as measures for railway safety in India, making full use of Japan's expertise as demonstrated in the zero casualty record in Shinkansen. Third, civil nuclear cooperation. After more than 6 years of negotiation, our two governments signed the agreement for cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy in 2016 and had it enter into force in July 2017. The monumental decision reflects a new level of mutual confidence and strategic partnership between Japan and India in the course of promoting clean energy and realizing a peaceful and secure world. The joint working group for promoting civil nuclear cooperation will be established soon. Third, fundamental upgrading of our economic relations. A striking example is the rapid increase in Japanese FDI to India and the Japan-India Investment Promotion Partnership, which was announced in 2014 to aim for doubling the number of Japanese companies in India and the amount of Japanese FDI to India, and disbursing 3.5 trillion yen of public and private finances from Japan in the following 5 years to come. Most recently, the FDI figures leaped from 2.6 billion US dollars in fiscal year 2015 to 4.7 billion dollars in fiscal year 2016. The number of Japanese companies operating in India has also marked a steady increase, totaling 1,369 in 2017. We hope this trend will be accelerated by mutual endeavors. Fifth, people-to-people exchanges. Last year, we celebrated the year of Japan-India friendly exchanges, and people-to-people exchanges between the two countries gathered momentum through various events during the commemorative year. The introduction of Open Sky effectively boosts travels to either country by both peoples. We hope that more active two-way exchanges will solidify the foundation of our partnership. Now, let me turn our eyes to the future. While I have talked about our remarkable achievements, the potential of Japan-India relationship, which was described by Prime Minister Abe as the most promising bilateral relationship in the world, is boundless. Indeed, as we all see, the Indo-Pacific region is blessed with opportunities and potential, but it is also a place where various challenges are arising. We are now working day and night to fulfill the potential and address the challenges and further deepen and strengthen our partnership in various areas. Tonight, I'd like to talk about 5 such areas from which we are hoping to have new signature projects. The first priority area is defense and security cooperation. We have made tangible progress in recent years. For example, our forces are increasingly engaged in joint exercises, such as Malabar Exercise, and we identified specific areas of cooperation in defense equipment and technology, robotics, and unmanned ground vehicles. However, we need much more in the field to demonstrate the strengths of our strategic partnership. Currently, we are working hard to further enhance exchanges and cooperation between our respective forces in the air, sea, and land. Bilateral joint exercises and multilateral activities should become more frequent and wide-ranging, as well as more advanced in enhancing our interoperability, including on anti-submarine aspects. In the future, we will witness expanding joint exercise and cooperation, not only in the maritime domain, but also in such areas as humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, peacekeeping operations, and counterterrorism. We are also working to strengthen cooperation in expanding maritime domain awareness in the Indo-Pacific region. Cooperation on defense equipment technology is also a crucial area to be expanded. Japan has traditionally taken a rather cautious approach in this field, but with the new 3 principles on transfer of defense equipment and technology approved by the Cabinet in 2014, Japan is determined to contribute to international peace and security more proactively through appropriate overseas transfers of defense equipment and technology. By doing so, we can also strengthen security and defense cooperation with our allies and partners. With India, we have started technical discussion for future research collaboration in the areas of unmanned ground vehicles and robotics. Our readiness to provide state-of-the-art US-2 amphibian aircrafts have been appreciated by the government of India as symbolizing the high degree of trust between the 2 countries. We look forward to more tangible outcome in the future. The second focal area is what we call the strategic connectivity. The concept is twofold. The first is to share and spread our common principles on connectivity infrastructure. And the second is to materialize concrete cooperation in the Indian Ocean sphere and beyond. Working with India on connectivity enhancement is one of the pillars of our free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. As our 2 prime ministers confirmed, Japan and India share the principle that connectivity infrastructure project should be implemented in an open, transparent, and non-exclusive manner based on international standards and responsible debt financing practices, while ensuring respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, the rule of law, and environment. Both countries believe in the importance of quality infrastructure. It is a welcoming trend that these principles are gaining currency in the international arena. Other elements of these principles were echoed by the United States and other partners in the region. Based on these principles, Japan and India are working together to extend cooperation and quality infrastructure development in the Indo-Pacific region. We are promoting cooperation in Africa with a view to developing industrial corridors and industrial network for the growth of Asia and Africa. Japan and India are also enhancing cooperation within India. As a prime example in this regard, Japan and India launched the Act East Forum to advance economic development, including connectivity in India's northeastern region, as well as to foster people-to-people exchanges. The first meeting of the Act East Forum was held last December, co-chaired by former Foreign Secretary Dr. Jaishankar and myself. In the forum, we discuss wide-ranging areas of potential cooperation, building on our history of cooperation in the Northeast in such fields like roads, electricities, water supply and sewage, as well as afforestation and community empowerment. I am confident that forum will serve as a springboard for expanding cooperation in this strategically and economically important region. Last weekend, I made a visit to Guwahati, Assam, to attend and speak at the Advantage Assam, along with Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Tobgay of Bhutan and other distinguished delegates. Our willingness to support the development of Northeast by public financing and private investment was welcomed by the enthusiasm of the people in the region. The third priority area is cooperation in making India and economic modernization. Japan has long contributed to the development of the manufacturing sector in India. Maruti Suzuki is a hallmark of such cooperation. In recent years, we have witnessed dramatic rise of our FDI to India, as well as a steady increase in the number of Japanese companies operating in India. Our investment earlier concentrated on the infrastructure and manufacturing sectors, but now it has diversified into retail, service, and other sectors. India has been named the most promising mid to long-term investment destination for Japanese companies. Now that most of the large Japanese companies have established their bases in India, we are encouraging our small and medium-sized enterprises to invest here. 2 weeks ago, the Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the largest business organization in Japan, with 1.25 million membership, of which 95% is SMEs, dispatched a high-powered mission to India. Mr. Akio Mimura, chairman of the chamber, was profoundly impressed by the vast potential of this country and promised me to encourage its members to seriously look into the possibility of future investment in India. We look forward to another surge of our business cooperation. The expanding investment by Japanese companies will further contribute to Make in India and Skill India initiatives. Last year, the first 4 Japan-India Institute for Manufacturing, JIMs, inaugurated under the Manufacturing Skill Transfer Promotion Program in the state of Gujarat, Karnataka, Rajasthan, and Tamil Nadu. The program will introduce Japanese manufacturing practices and accelerate the training of future shop floor leaders and engineers. Cooperation in high-speed railway is another area where Japan contributes to making India Skill India, bringing about technological transfer and social transformation. Coupled with JIMs and other training schemes, we hope to substantively contribute to the skill development in India workers. I will continue to work closely with Honorable Minister of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, to materialize concrete outcomes. The fourth area is environment. Dealing with environmental problems in India has become priority issues. Our Prime Minister Modi promotes Clean India as an important mission. Environmental problems are almost an inevitable challenge as countries industrialize their economies. Japan was no exception, and many people suffered from grave pollution-induced diseases in the past. We spent a lot of time, resources, and made great efforts to clean the environment to solve the problems that posed imminent danger to our health and productivity. If we have taken action earlier to dispose of the problems, the social and financial cost would have been reduced substantially. Drawing on our own bitter experiences, Japan stands ready to cooperate with Indian people to think together and act together to address the issues of atmospheric environment in this country. From 1960s and 1980s, a Japanese man named Tatsumaru Sugiyama came to India to plant eucalyptus trees between Delhi and Amritsar and along the 3,000 kilometers Shivalik range to prevent landslides and desertification. People called him Green Father. This example illustrates Japan and India have long been cooperating in the environmental field, and I like to see this tradition handed down to the future. Against such backdrop, the embassy launched Japan's Blue Sky initiatives to promote cooperation in controlling India's air pollution by making full use of Japanese technology and technology. The initiatives comprise of efforts implemented by Japanese public and private sectors in India to tackle air pollution, such as through the installation of certain equipment to suppress the emission of air pollutants from thermal power plants, the incorporation technology to turn agricultural waste to biomass fuels, waste power generation to suppress the generation of dioxins and CO2 emissions, and the introduction of an intelligent transportation system to reduce emission gas. Japan is keen to further expand efforts, including those under the Japan Blue Sky initiatives, and help enable people to live a healthier and more comfortable life in India. The fifth and final area is the promotion of Japanese language education in India. We should not neglect the people-to-people aspect of a bilateral relationship, which is a fundamental element that brings our people closer. Fluency in the Japanese language will be of great benefit to the Indian people, not only in terms of better mutual understanding, but for augmenting business and job opportunities. An increased number of Japanese language speakers will also benefit Japanese entities in India, which endeavor to enhance their scope of operation in India. We saw great progress in this area during Prime Minister Abe's visit last year, where the two leaders recognized the importance of expanding Japanese language education in India for achieving wider and closer industrial cooperation. They agreed on various efforts in promoting Japanese language education, and I signed a memorandum of cooperation in the field of Japanese language education in India with former Foreign Secretary Jai Shankar to further materialize such efforts. Under this MOC, we will implement specific measures to increase the number of Japanese language teachers, as well as Japanese language certificate courses. I am personally invested in carrying out this effort, and I'm excited to see the increase in the number of Japanese language speakers in India. They will further foster economic cooperation and mutual understanding between our two countries. Given the limited time, I have only focused on 5 areas of current and future cooperation in this evening. But we have many other up-and-coming avenues of our cooperation, such as startups, sanitation, health, science technology, intellectual exchanges, and sports exchanges. We are also working very closely with India on various regional and global challenges. We have critically important Japan-India-US trilateral dialogue and quadrilaterals with Australia to achieve free and open prosperous in the Pacific. We are working toward achieving the great potential of Japan-India-ASEAN cooperation based on deep historical ties among the 3 parties. In this regard, we welcome wholeheartedly the great success of the recent India-ASEAN Commemorative Summit. Furthermore, Japan is keen to work with the BIMSTEC, IORA, and other regional frameworks in which India plays a key role. As for closing, let me stress that it is indeed a timely and sharp-eyed initiative that Ananta Aspen Center and the Nippon Foundation launched a new scheme for parliamentary exchange between 2 countries. We welcome this initiative wholeheartedly We hope that Honorable B.J. Panda and other MPs will have a fruitful visit later this month, and we use the experience as a leverage to further contribute to our bilateral relationship. Lastly, I'd like to emphasize our strong desire to advance a special strategic partnership to an even higher stage. Japan and India are countries that share values, including our commitment to democracy, openness, and the rule of law. The Japanese and Indian economies complement each other, as Japan shares advanced technology and finances projects with India, which in turn provides a large market and a huge young talented working force. We have been historic, and we have deep historic and spiritual ties, which bring our people closer. It is my firm conviction that Japan-India relationship is a certainty in an increasingly uncertain and volatile world. As Prime Minister Abe said, a robust Japan-India relationship is a global common good that underpins the regional order. I hope that every one of you in this auditorium and many more in this country will join in our common endeavor to further strengthen our special partnership. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Hiramatsu, for that very comprehensive address covering 5 pillars that are already well developed and 5 thrust areas for the future. Before I begin our conversation, I would like to recognize in the audience 2 more of my colleagues who have joined us, Professor Sugata Bose and Shri Bhartendra Singh. Let me start by asking you a couple of questions regarding infrastructure, because there is such a big thrust being given to infrastructure in India in general, and also especially with Japanese aid at 3 different levels. First, the domestic projects, then those in our immediate neighborhood, like in the northeast and neighboring countries, and those that span continents from the Indo-Pacific all the way to Africa. Let me ask you about the high-speed railway project in India, which internally in India has been dominated by a binary dialogue. On the one side, the dialogue is, should India be aspiring so high for such big projects? Should it not be looking at more basic things? And the counter to that simply has been that this is a chance of a lifetime, tremendous Japanese aid, on very advantageous terms. But you have touched upon something that ought to have been the crux of the narrative, which is the transformative power of such high technology projects. You've mentioned the transformation in Japan because of the Shinkansen. I would like to say that even among those who quibble about our high-speed railway project, they represent viewpoints. If you trace back to the beginnings of our republic, even in Pandit Nehru's time, we spent a lot of resources on such flagship projects such as dams and steel plants and power plants, whereas many would have said that we needed much more basic investments. But the flagship investments were necessary to ensure that while India as a whole was being uplifted, we did not forget to establish our focus on technology and the growth for the future. Now, considering this whole situation in India, how quickly do you see the high-speed railway project coming up? How do you answer the critics who say this is only going to be for the elite who will pay high fares? Tell us a little bit more about what transformative effects it could have in India.
Thank you very much. This is a symbolic project between Japan and India. We are very pleased that we have inaugurated this project already last year. The concrete work implementation of this program will start sometime this year. We are hoping that it will be implemented as scheduled. The Shinkansen project is something not only to build the infrastructure, but to transform the way of life, transform the culture of safety, transform the way of life. And I think it's very important to see that this project has brought a lot of dream and aspiration to the people in Japan when it was established in 1964. We saw that a very bright future will come after this flagship project is implemented. And also, I can tell you that this is very safe system. There's no casualty during the course of operation more than 50 years. And even in the time of a Great East earthquake, which struck Japan, 2011, I think. So at that time, I think more than 20 Shinkansen trains are operating, are running, but no, in that region, I mean the Tohoku region, but not one of them derailed because of the very high technology to detect earthquake and to stop all trains operating. That is one example. So we are very proud of this safety culture of Shinkansen, and also very timely operation of Shinkansen, the great service we are going to provide by this Shinkansen system. So not only very high-tech infrastructure, but also we can bring a very bright future for Indian industry and very comfortable ride with Shinkansen and bring safety culture in railway system as a whole. We are not only supporting Shinkansen construction, but also we are supporting the safety of these conventional railways. That is, I think, very important. So we have been talking a lot with Indian railway authorities, and we have dispatched experts how to improve safety in the conventional railway system too. So we are not only dealing with Shinkansen project, but also we are very keen to support this safety aspect of conventional railway system. So in this way, we'll be very happy to provide high standard technology and operational ethics of Japanese Shinkansen and other railway system. So we are happy to realize this common dream together in years to come.
Let me ask you another infrastructure-related question, and this has to do with the ones that India and Japan are working together on outside of India. So Japan is interested in BIMSTEC. There is already a plan to have highway corridor all the way from India through Myanmar all the way to Thailand. And the other more ambitious project, of course, is the Freedom Corridor all the way from the Indo-Pacific to Africa. Now, the inevitable question comes up that this is a sort of an answer to OBOR, what China is building with its Belt and Road Initiative. Now, how would you characterize, how are these projects that India and Japan are working on, how are they distinct from the OBOR projects? Is it in financing terms? Is it something to do with what you mentioned in your talk about respecting the sovereignty of the nations through which these projects cut through? What else would you have to say about this?
As I said, this project we are planning to implement together with India to support the infrastructure project, not only India, but also surrounding nations, even in Africa and ASEAN. We are very happy to do that because infrastructure development is fundamental for economic development in this region. So this idea of free and open Indo-Pacific strategy is not only, disseminating and sharing the values, but also to have a concrete project implement together with countries like India. Japan is very keen to promote quality infrastructure project, is abiding by international standards, the openness, non-exclusiveness, and importance for economic viabilities and financial health, and environmental consideration. So we like to implement our cooperation investment in infrastructure project in line with these international standards. So I think in our joint statement agreed by two prime ministers, when Prime Minister Abe came to Gujarat last September, these principles were clearly mentioned in the joint statement. So we share this kind of principles. Of course, the sovereignty issue is also mentioned in this document. So based on that common philosophy, we are going to implement these projects. So I think these principles are shared, as I said in my statement, by countries like United States. So I like to have this kind of a project implemented together in this region. I think that is very important for the development, not only here in India, but also in the countries surrounding India and also in the Pacific region as a whole. And as I said, not only countries surrounding India, but also in India, we are very keen to support the project in Northeastern region. That is a gateway for Southeast Asia and ASEAN countries. So how to connect this region too with other ASEAN countries like Myanmar, Thailand, that is another important agenda for us. So infrastructure project here in India and surrounding countries, a lot of future for our joint endeavor together between Japan and India.
Let me ask you something about civil nuclear cooperation. Now, no nation's views on nuclear doctrines should count for more than Japan's, as the only country that has ever suffered a hostile nuclear attack. Now, we have seen India's situation transform in the last 2 decades, from the late 1990s, when we had sanctions imposed on us by several countries, to a situation today where India is recognized as, even though it was not part of the nuclear club, had always abided by non-proliferation ideals. And I think it is something for India to be proud of, that a country like Japan now endorses that viewpoint. As you mentioned in your speech, it has taken some years of discussions, and a joint working group is to be set up. And yet there are still, this has happened with Australia, it has happened with other nations as well, and yet there are hurdles to India getting that sort of recognition from countries who have a far less stellar record on non-proliferation. In fact, countries that have themselves indulged in proliferation are happy to block India's entry into the NSG. How do you see the way forward? How do you see India being a full member of many of these agreements? We've made progress with MTCR and others, but how do you see the path forward, and how can India and Japan cooperate in India being a full partner in civil nuclear doctrines that also contain proliferation?
We are very happy to see India become a member of the NSC. We have been working closely with the other countries, member countries of the NSC, in order that India will be a member country of this important grouping. So we'll continue to do that, because India's high aspiration to be responsible partner of NSC should be highly respected. So Japan has been working not only with India but other important members of NSC, how to find a way. I know that India will be a member in a very early stage. So we'll continue this effort, and I hope it will happen sometime soon. Not only NSC, but also, as you mentioned, MTCR and other Australia group. Japan has been playing a leading role that India will be part of the international scheme for arms control and the nuclear weapons, nuclear technology control. So that is, as an important friend, Japan always stand ready, that India will become an important player in this field too.
In your speech, you mentioned that while India has an ambitious program called Make in India, an Indo-Japanese collaboration, which is Suzuki Maruti, predates it by several decades and is one of the superb examples of manufacturing scale-up in a sector which India didn't really have. Now, I'm going to ask you a more candid question, because friends don't necessarily always need to agree on everything. And we know that in India, business and investment and manufacturing and labor laws can often be hurdles that are rather higher than similar hurdles in other parts of the world. Now, recently, India has improved in the World Bank's ranking on ease of doing business index. It has come up to 100. That's being celebrated quite a lot. I want your candid opinion. Is this good enough? Do we need to be much better than 100 for really things to start happening? What are some of the areas that, as a friend, you find still tough going in India, where we should introspect and make more changes?
Yes, I have been talking with Japanese business people almost every day, and to support their business here in India. And I see a lot of enthusiasm on the part of business sector, not only here, but also in Tokyo, in Japan, that they want to do more business here. They want to invest more because of the potential India has in terms of volumes, size of the country and also size of the population. So I can assure you that there is a lot of interest on the part of the Japanese industry here in India. But at the same time, in old days, maybe 10 years or 20 years back, they suffered a lot because of the very slow pace of administrative process, or because of the little ambiguous, implementation, application of some of the laws, and a very complex tax system, and a relatively not well-developed infrastructure in this country. But I'm sure that people feel that India has been making a tremendous progress in terms of the obstacles they faced 10 or 20 years ago. But at the same time, still they have something which may require some attention from the Indian government. One is still rather low pace of procedure in terms of approval of some business activities here, and tax system, application of tax sometimes are not unified, sometimes volatile, and are not uniformly applied. So it takes time, and it depends on the state, it depends on the people. Maybe the application of tax differs. So and also still we need more infrastructure development in terms of provision of electricity, access roads, and some incentives if they can enjoy. Maybe it will facilitate more investment in this country. So all in all, I'm happy to see that the rank has been increased from 130 to 100. But 100 is, I don't know, that is something to celebrate. But I think in view of the importance of India's economy, India's role to be played, I think in years to come, the rank will go up even further. So we have been talking with Indian authorities together with our business sector, many issues with regard to easing our business here in India. So we have already established good mechanisms for consultation, and but sometimes it takes some time and need more energy to solve some of the questions, some of the problems. So as I said at the beginning, in my 2 years' term, I think several problems have been solved by the joint endeavor, but still some issues remain unsolved. So we need more energy and more efforts for solution of these problems. But together with Indians authorities and people, I'm sure that many other issues can be solved in the future. So I'm rather confident and optimistic about the way your government is handling in terms of business atmosphere, environment improvement.
Thank you. Let me open up